the appropriate guardrails and limitations to ensure that it's done properly, because in doing what is best for Canadians, we have to get that balance right. And my encouragement would be that you look at it from the perspective of not only those who are in the government benches, but to acknowledge, very importantly, the perspectives represented also in the opposition benches, to make sure that we do get that balance right.
Unfortunately, I have to interrupt there, and the honourable member will have 8 minutes when this continues to be debated a little bit later. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Halifax.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to recognize a Halifax celebrity's milestone Hatch Day. This year, Halifax's favorite tortoise, Gus, turned 100 years old. In 1942, Gus was bought for $5 from a Florida pet store and brought to the Museum of Natural History in Halifax, where he has called home for the past 80 years. Gus can often be seen bringing delight to the museum's many visitors while wandering the galleries or outside in the museum's backyard. He enjoys munching on blueberries, bananas, and lettuce. Now in 2022, Gus is believed to be the oldest gopher tortoise on record, reaching this centennial milestone when other gopher tortoises typically live to just 40 to 80 years old. Madam Speaker, I believe the love and affection he's received from generations of Haligonians and the outstanding team at the Museum of Natural History have something to do with his slow and steady longevity. Happy 100th birthday, Gus, and have a shell of a time!
Yay. The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Madam Speaker, on this day I would like to sincerely thank the members of the Merit RCMP detachment. The last 12 months have been very challenging for the community of Merit. Flooding led to evacuations, and evacuations sadly attract crime such as looting and vandalism. This all significantly adds to the workload of every officer in this community, not to mention officers and their own families also being impacted on a personal level. More recently, over the past few weeks, there's also been several other serious and alarming events. Over this time frame, there have been crimes of serious concerns that have included multiple shooting incidents, a kidnapping, a wanted suspect at large, and late last week, a stolen vehicle that resulted in a police chase with an armed suspect. Throughout all of this, the dedicated members of this small detachment have gone above and beyond to keep their community of Merit safe. I ask all honorable members to please join me in thanking them for their dedication and service to their community, and to all the RCMP who are doing the same thing each and every day for Canadians.
The honourable member for Canada Carleton.
Madam Speaker, I rise to commend the incredible initiative of my Canada Carleton Youth Council, an inspiring group of 20 high school students who work to make a positive difference in our community. To commemorate the ongoing 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, these students are stepping up and taking action. Together, the Youth Council members are raising donations of toys, hygiene products, kitchen items, and more, all of which will be donated to families fleeing domestic violence through our riding's local community support centre. These items will make a real difference in the lives of the families who are starting over. Thank you to the Canada Carleton Youth Council for taking action, and a special thanks to Jacqueline, Dinah, Kozar, and Amelia for leading this initiative amongst their peers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Madam Speaker, I want to start by thanking all those helping with the warming centres across my riding. It is cold and snowy, and people need help. Housing is a human right, and Canada needs to start acting like it. On November the 25th, a vital conversation on housing security was hosted by the Campbell River Community Foundation. I want to thank the co-sponsors, Campbell River and District Homeless Coalition, a coalition that brings stakeholders together to address homelessness. The City of Campbell River, Leith Wheeler, Investors Council, Strathcona Regional District, BC Housing, and CMHC. People participated from many parts of my riding, and they all agreed that housing is a crisis everywhere. From Cortez to Port Hardy to Gold River to Campbell River to Powell River, every corner of our region is struggling. A clear challenge I heard is communities that are small find the application process leaves them out, although their needs are so high. Our innovative communities are doing so much, but Canada must finally step up to support housing in rural and remote communities. I'm asking them to do so now.
Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to express my deepest condolences to Stuart Pottery and his family following the passing of his loving wife, Michelle. Michelle was diagnosed with cancer last year and fought courageously each and every day with a smile. Her strength and perseverance, despite the difficult battle, inspired all those who knew her. This summer, I presented the Potteries with my Platinum Jubilee Community Hero Award in recognition of their decades of service to the much-loved Centennial Arena in Fairview. Since 2011, the Potteries ran the rink as a team with warmth, love, and joy. Whenever anything needed to be done, Michelle was there without any hesitation. In fact, the arena was where they met in 1980 and married in 1983. This year, the Fairview family tree lighting ceremony will be held in Michelle's memory next weekend. It's a touching tribute to her memory and deep love. My sincere condolences to Stuart, his family, and all those who loved Michelle. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Christmas season is upon us, but for some, the prospects are not so merry. The impacts of inflation is affecting the ability of many Canadians to make ends meet. And it's not just about putting gifts under the tree. A record number of Canadians are having to make the choice between heating and eating. In the midst of these challenges, local organizations that are there to help are also feeling the squeeze from record usage, as well as many not being able to afford to be as generous this year as years past. If folks have the ability to donate resources to a food bank or another local charity, I encourage you to please do so. There are a number of them across East Central Alberta, as well as thousands of great organizations across Canada, and even some very, very fitting ones here in our nation's capital. Madam Speaker, when we give, we get much more in return. The story of the birth of Christ and the message of Christmas is one of giving. I encourage everyone who can to make sure they give back. No one in a country as blessed and as prosperous as Canada should go hungry at Christmas.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is a great pleasure for me to stand in the House today and pay special recognition to my longtime friend and supporter, Sam Primucci. Though many Canadians know and love Sam for his successful business skills in the food industry and his Pizza Nova chains, I know him for his warm and giving spirit to others. For this reason, he was granted a Leadership and Community Service Award at the recent Pentola d'Oro Gala in Toronto, hosted by the Italian Chamber of Commerce. I want to offer Sam and his wife Jenna my sincerest congratulations. Thank him for his excellent work, not only in Humber River Black Creek, but in all of Canada. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Milton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Oral health is absolutely essential, and tooth decay is the most common yet preventable childhood chronic disease, and it's one of the #1 reasons that kids miss school. And fully 1/3 of Canadians are unable to visit the dentist because it's expensive and they don't have insurance. So we introduced the Interim Canada Child Dental Benefit. 500,000 children, Madam Speaker, under 12 can now access the Canada Dental Benefit, ensuring that their smiles will get the care that they need and deserve. I've heard from a number of families in my riding who don't have insurance and aren't eligible for provincial programs. Those kids will be able to get their teeth checked now, and that's so, so important. So families with kids under 12 who are uninsured for dental coverage and have an adjusted net annual income of under $90,000, they can head to canada.ca/dental for more information and apply for the Canada Dental Benefit. Families can receive up to $650 this year and next year per kid under 12. So huge thanks go to dentists, dental hygienists, and other dental health practitioners for helping keep Canadian kids' smiles healthy and happy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member Costa Bay Central Notre Dame.
Madam Speaker, commercial fishers feel their livelihoods are threatened by this Liberal government. More and more fisheries are being subjected to the precautionary principle because of the lack of science or science that hasn't kept up with the changing ecosystem. This has resulted in fisheries either being shut down or operating with quotas that don't reflect the abundance, as is the case with northern cod. Last spring, the minister stood in this House and told us that new vessels promised under the National Shipbuilding Strategy will be ready to complete cod surveys this fall. This is not the case. This aspect of scientific data will be missing for the 3rd consecutive year and not available to be incorporated into this year's stock assessments. As this year's northern cod stock assessments begin, I urge the Minister to give more weight to the incredible catch rates experienced by fish harvesters and to increase next year's quota accordingly. It's time for this government to respect what harvesters experience on the water and recognize them as an important part of the ocean ecosystem and the blue economy.
Yeah. The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow we will mark an important milestone with the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Mine Ban Treaty, or as we all know it, the Ottawa Convention. In October 1996, then Canadian Foreign Minister, the indomitable Lloyd Axworthy, boldly challenged the international community to follow through with a global ban on landmines. The following year, on December 3rd, 1997, 122 countries signed this landmark agreement in Ottawa. Since that historic event, Canada has become a recognized global leader in helping countries rid themselves of landmines. The job is not done. Nearly 60 countries remain afflicted by these horrific weapons, which continue to maim and kill civilians, disproportionately affecting vulnerable communities, women and girls. As we mark this milestone for the Ottawa Convention, let's celebrate the achievements made thus far and recommit ourselves to work towards a world free of landmines and other unexploded ordnance. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Everything feels broken in Canada because of these Liberals. The inflation and affordability crisis is causing stress on Canadian families who, for the first time in their lives, are having to make difficult decisions as their household incomes are being eaten up by the cost of everything going up. The cost of groceries are up, gas, home heating, housing affordability, interest rates, food bank usage, all up. And when you add the tripling of the carbon tax and other planned tax increases taking effect in January and April 2023, things are about to get worse. It's no wonder why Canadian families and businesses are at a breaking point, and one-time bribe payments by these Liberals won't solve what is quickly becoming a bigger crisis than it already is. The people I represent in Barrie, Innisfil, and across Canada are spending an extra $3,500 a year because of this self-inflicted Liberal inflation. How did we, Canada, as a G7 country, get to a point where seniors, young people, families, and businesses have been lied to and let down, with many losing their hopes, their dreams, their confidence, and their dignity?
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Madam Speaker, for my eyes only, that's the story of a Prime Minister who is refusing to act while a foreign country tries to influence Canada elections. Here's an overview of the TV-worthy show. First episode. A newspaper reveals serious allegations about the funding of a clandestine network of 11 candidates in the 2019 elections by China's communist regime. The Prime Minister denies everything. Second episode. We learn that spies have been infiltrated into members' offices, but the Prime Minister said that he is not familiar with the illegal funding. Third episode. The RCMP confirms that it is investigating multiple examples of foreign interference in Canada's democratic process, but the Prime Minister claims that nothing happened. Fourth episode, bombshell at a parliamentary committee. The National Security Agency confirms that it prepared not one but several briefing sessions for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister insists that the information is for his eyes only, that Canadians don't need to know. To be continued at next question period. Will the Prime Minister finally tell Canadians the truth? The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne. Madam Speaker, gender-based violence is one of the most widespread examples of human rights violations of our time. When we pay attention, we quickly realize that this type of violence is everywhere around us, on TV and music, and even sometimes during interactions with friends. When someone experiences violence because of their gender, like sexual assault, that's what we call gender-based violence. We are all responsible for helping to end this type of violence. That's why during this 16-day campaign, I would invite all Canadians to take gender-based violence seriously, learn to recognize it, and to recognize that we need healthy and respectful relationships. Everyone deserves to live safe from violence. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, Saturday, December 3rd is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a day to mobilize support for their dignity, rights, and well-being, and to promote an understanding of disability issues. And mobilize we must on Bill C-22. In the 30 years since this day was proclaimed, the disability community has had to do much heavy lifting for their basic human rights. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments have not done enough to remove discriminatory barriers while allowing Canadians with disabilities to fall into poverty. Canada aspires to be a world leader in the eradication of poverty, and the Canada Disability Benefit is our chance to make that a reality for persons with disabilities. This is an historic opportunity for the opposition parties to hold this government to account by amending and enacting Canada's first federal law to legislate people out of poverty, Bill C-22.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Baie-James, Nunavik-EU. Madam Speaker, the Tour de l'Abitibi has now existed for more than 50 years, and it has been officially ushered into the Cycling Canada Hall of Fame. It's the only competition in the UCI Junior Nations Cup circuit to be in the Americas, and it's the only one of the 8 events to be outside Europe. It's recognized throughout the world, and there's a parallel competition for young Quebec cyclists. The Tour de l'Abitibi brings together 150 cyclists from about 20 teams from throughout the world, with 7 stages over 7 days, nearly 700 kilometers. It's unforgettable. Its president, Mélanie Rocher, was a former colleague at the Abitibi-Témiscamingue Health and Social Services Center. She stated that the Tour de l'Abitibi shapes cyclists, volunteers, and regional pride. I'd like to thank the organizers and volunteers, and I hope that the Tour de l'Abitibi lasts another 50 years. Thank you.
Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
In December of 2016, this Liberal government made amendments to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. 6 years later, it is clear there is a devastating addiction crisis in our country, and it is getting worse. Safe supply has not worked. The Liberals' failed policies are worsening the situation. They need to bring forward a comprehensive, recovery-oriented plan to tackle Canada's addiction crisis and give people control of their lives again. We need to change to a recovery-oriented approach. This means prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery. In Alberta, by getting people into recovery, overdose deaths in their province have decreased by half. We need to meet people where they're at, but not leave them there. Conservatives believe that given the opportunity and appropriate supports, Canadians suffering from addiction have the ability to recover.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to mark the 30th anniversary of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Our government is proud to support this year's theme, Transformative Solutions for Inclusive Development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. Since 2015, we have taken bold action to advance the rights of persons with disabilities. We recently launched Canada's first ever Disability Inclusion Action Plan to remove barriers that persons with disabilities face and to build a more inclusive Canada. And with Bill C-22, the Canada Disability Benefit, we have the potential to lift hundreds of thousands of working-age persons with disabilities out of poverty. In the spirit of nothing without us, we will continue working with the disability community on the design and delivery of these programs. Madam Speaker, I encourage every member of the House to spend December 3rd in celebration of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Official Opposition Deputy Leader.
Madam Speaker, the Governor of the Bank of Canada has confirmed if the Liberals' deficit was lower, inflation would have been lower today. The enormous deficit is going to cost each and every Canadian an extra $3,500. Less money for food, less money for gas, less money to heat their homes. When will the Liberals understand that their failed policies and enormous deficits are causing continuous pain on Canadians?
L'Honorable Ministre.
Madam Speaker, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We have the lowest deficit and the lowest debt among all countries in the G7. But of course, these are challenging times. We see that global inflation and the global economic instability is affecting Canadians, and that's why we've put forward a solid and responsible plan to help them. This morning, as I do every morning, and as members of this government do all of the time, I check the numbers, and the new labour force survey came out, Madam Speaker. Over 50,000 full-time jobs were created in November alone in this country, and wages have continued.
The Honourable Official Opposition Deputy Leader.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals will blame everyone else for their own inflationary problem. Even future possible Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney said that the problem was domestically created. This member is proud that her government's spending sent 1.5 million Canadians into a food bank in a single month, that 1 in 5 Canadians have to skip lunch. How many more families have to go into food banks? How many more families have to skip meals before they finally get a grip, get their spending under control, and axe their carbon tax?
Yeah. L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire du ministre du Tourisme et ministre associé des Finances.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to correct the record. It is obvious to all Canadians that the world is going through a period of huge instability due to the war commenced by Russia, due to a global pandemic that we have just come out of. But, Madam Speaker, we are there for Canadians in order to continue to support them. We just don't understand why the Conservatives aren't. They voted against lowering taxes on middle-class Canadians on 2 separate occasions, Madam Speaker. It is this Liberal government that is there for Canadians, and Canadians know that.
The Official Opposition Deputy Leader.
Madam Speaker, again, it's clear from the members' answers that they don't understand the pain that they're causing on Canadians. Even the Governor of the Bank of Canada said that the inflation in Canada today is a homegrown problem. That means it's a Liberal-created issue. This government spent $110 billion before the pandemic started. They spent $500 billion during the pandemic, 40% of which had nothing to do with COVID measures. Their reckless spending is costing Canadians more and more. Less food, less gas, less groceries for Canadians. When will they stop?
Yeah. L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire du Premier ministre et de la présidente du Conseil du Trésor.
Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, and I dare say most parliamentarians understand how tough these times are for Canadians. And that's the reason why most parliamentarians have supported, and especially these great government programs such as the Canada Child Benefit, such as the Canada Dental Benefit, such as the Canada's Workers Benefit, are there to help Canadians in these tough times. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the official opposition has chosen to vote at every opportunity against these important programs which come to the aid of Canadians.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The government has made a lot of announcements, but we're getting more and more calls from constituents who are struggling to make ends meet. And the majority of them are middle-class workers and those working hard to join it. They don't qualify for government announcements because they make too much money, but inflation, the rising cost of living, and skyrocketing interest rates don't spare them one bit. When will the Liberals finally understand the best way to help everyone is to stop raising taxes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, for years now, our government has been concerned about Canadians' situation and workers and families, and that's why we introduced the Canada Child Benefit. That's why we have the Workers' Benefit, which will truly help people who are working hard and all they need is a little help. But one thing is for sure, Madam Speaker, in Canada we now have a program to help people with childcare, and the Conservatives voted against it. We cut the costs in half. The honourable member. Madam Speaker, Inflation in Canada is around 7%. The average credit card balance is at a high of around $2,000, and credit card interest is at around 21%. Add to that the cost of heating, gas, food, and rent, and the middle class is at the breaking point. What's the Liberal solution? Raise taxes on paychecks and triple the carbon tax. On behalf of the middle class and those who can no longer afford to join it, will the Liberals stop raising taxes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism. Madam Speaker, I'm always a bit gobsmacked that members from Quebec stand up, and they must know that the price on pollution doesn't apply in Quebec. But we have a responsible and sound plan to help Canadians who are struggling to make ends meet, unlike the Conservatives who have no plan whatsoever. Their plan is to abandon the fight against climate change and to go after our seniors' pensions. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, StatsCan shows that French is in decline in the workplace in Quebec. 1 in 5 Quebecers can't work in French. And 35% of federally regulated workplaces work primarily in English. The federal government is protecting English in the workplace by allowing federally regulated companies to continue to skirt the Charter of the French languages. The Charter of the French language. How does the minister explain this situation? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Quebec and the federal government have a shared goal, and that is to protect and promote French all across Canada, including Quebec. And that's why we're moving ahead with an ambitious bill that will make a difference, that will allow workers in federally regulated private companies to work in French and be served in French as customers. And we want that bill to be enacted as quickly as possible. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, StatsCan also reveals that it's in the areas of finance and insurance that French is in the most significant decline. In other words, in banks, and those are federally regulated. That's the main place where French is in decline. But what the federal government is not protecting French, they're protecting the banks and the right to work in English. Do they want to protect the banks or French? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Madam Speaker, first of all, we recognize that French is in decline in Canada, and the census gave us data to indicate that. We're the first government ever to recognize the decline of French, and that's why we've moved ahead with ambitious legislation which will make a difference. We want for federally regulated private companies, for workers and customers to have the choice to work and be served in French. We hope that the opposition will work with us to enact this legislation because it will make a real difference in the lives of all Canadians. Thank you. I think I'm hearing more voices than just the minister, so I would ask people to respect the fact that I did not give them the floor, and they should wait on both sides. When someone else has the floor, people should remain silent in the House.
The situation in our ERs is a disaster. People cannot get treatment or care when they need it. In my riding, the hospitals at Port Hardy and Port McNeill ERs have been forced to close regularly. Yesterday, a person even collapsed at the Port Hardy ER. They had gone for help and they found it closed. For years, the Liberals have underfunded healthcare, and Canadians are now not able to even access it. When will this government act on the healthcare staffing crisis in rural communities and increase the Canada healthcare transfers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question and the concern from my colleague opposite. This is a really urgent time, and urgent actions are required to address the current healthcare, human resources, workforce crisis. That's why we've taken significant actions by establishing a coalition for action for health workers to inform immediate and long-term solutions to address significant health workforce challenges. We've also introduced measures to facilitate the entry of foreign national physicians as permanent residents, and we've also announced a chief nursing officer to provide strategic advice from a nursing perspective to Health Canada on priority policy and program areas. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, living with a disability should not mean living in poverty. Yet this is the reality for close to 1 million Canadians. More persons with disabilities are now contemplating medical assistance in dying, not because they want to die, but because they cannot afford to live. This government was clear that people won't actually get the Canada Disability Benefit for at least another year. What is the minister's plan to help people with disabilities get by as they wait for the Canada Disability Benefit?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment, Social Development,
and Disability Inclusion.
And Disability, sorry.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the important question. We must address the long-standing financial insecurity that is the lived reality of far too many working-age Canadians with disabilities. Madam Speaker, Bill C-22 will help us do just that by creating the groundbreaking Canada Disability Benefit. The CDB has the potential to lift hundreds of thousands of Canadians with disabilities out of poverty. The CDB will be a supplement to existing benefits like the Guaranteed Income Supplement, and it will be paid to people who need it most. Bill C-22 passed second reading 328 votes to 0 and is being studied at committee.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Canadians are being crushed by just how expensive life has become under these Liberals. And groceries hit 40-year high, driving nearly 1.5 million Canadians to the food bank. The cost of home heating has skyrocketed to the point where Canadians have to choose between heating and eating, and the price of diesel in the Maritimes spiked to over $3 per litre. Now the Liberals are going to continue to raise their tax on everything. Will this Liberal government stop forcing their failed carbon tax on Canadians?
Yeah.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we put forward a responsible plan that will meet the needs of the vulnerable Canadians in this country, as well as ensure that we continue to be fiscally responsible. On the other side of this House, we have the Conservatives and the Conservative leader that is proposing no economic plan for our country. In fact, the only economic advice that the Conservatives have proposed comes from the Conservative leader telling Canadians that they can opt out of inflation by buying cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency has since crashed, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes, and I do want to remind members that they should hold their thoughts until I recognize them. The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Madam Speaker, that word salad won't fill the bowls of Canadians, and in fact, many Canadians can't afford to fill their bowls with salad because the price of lettuce under these Liberals has tripled. They're punishing people for the crime of trying to feed their families, trying to drive to work, and trying to just get by. And what are they going to do? They're going to triple down by tripling their failed carbon tax. They're completely out of touch with everyday Canadians. They want some economic advice. They want to know what a plan looks like. Stop raising taxes on Canadians. Will they cancel their failed carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as the honourable member knows, as the price on pollution increases, so does the climate action rebate, Mr. Speaker. It makes families better off, 8 out of 10 families, according to the parliamentary budget officer. But you know what doesn't make families better off, Mr. Speaker? Investing in cryptocurrency. And I don't know if the honourable member has been reading headlines lately, but many Canadians have lost their shirts, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition still has not apologized in this House.
The Honourable Member for Colonial Lake Country.
Madam Speaker, after 7 years of this government's high debt, high tax, high spend agenda, the result is 40-year high Liberal-made inflation. The result is people barely affording basic necessities. The result is organizations like the Salvation Army saying that they have 30% increases in families with children in need coming for their services. Will the Liberal government stop forcing their failed carbon tax on Canadians?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I spent a lot of time in opposition when Stephen Harper's government, quite frankly, never raised the spectre or issue of those that were the most vulnerable. This is the government that set targets on poverty
I'm sure that the honourable members would want to hear the answer, and I would just, whether they're in agreement with it or not, but I think that they owe the respect to at least hear the answer so that another question can be posed. The honourable government House Leader can start from the top.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And we know that times are difficult across the world. It doesn't matter to Canadians who are trying to pay the bills that we have one of the lowest rates of inflation anywhere in the world, lower than the G7 average, lower than the EU, lower than the US, lower than the UK. It doesn't matter, and they're absolutely right. But what does matter is what we do in the face of those global headwinds. Do we expand anxiety and fear, as the opposition is trying to do, or do we put real, tangible solutions that actually help people with the problems they're facing? And I would submit, Madam Speaker, we need to do the second, not the first.
I remember Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Madam Speaker, even the Governor of the Bank of Canada said that inflation was homegrown because of these Liberals. Right. A resident of mine let me know that he sent some Christmas baking to a relative in Penticton, which is only 45 minutes from Kelowna. It cost him $75. Wow. The fuel surcharge fee on his bill was 40%, and this is before the tripling of the Liberals' carbon tax. So much for the annual Christmas tradition of sending baking to those you love. Will this Liberal government stop forcing their failed carbon tax on Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Parliamentary Secretary,
thank you,
sorry.
Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member from BC never, ever talks about the costs of climate change, never talks about the rebate. I would remind her that 600 people died under the heat dome in British Columbia. They were, of course, subject to the atmospheric river, which cost the BC economy $9 billion. We've sent $5 billion to help that good province rebuild, Madam Speaker, and the honourable member should get serious about climate change. It's costing our citizens plenty.
Right. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Well, despite being absolutely useless, this government insists on tripling the carbon tax. When taxes go up, the money in bank accounts of Canadians actually goes down. Basic math, logic. Welcome, folks. In order to try to make ends meet, moms are actually watering down baby formula, seniors are turning their thermostats down to 17, and Canadian families are accessing food banks like they've never done before. Canadians are struggling. So when will these Liberals show some compassion and axe the tax?
Yeah! The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to talk about another group of families that I've been invited to go cook and serve Christmas dinner for next weekend. And it's the over 125 people that lost their homes due to Hurricane Fiona. They have no homes. They're living with family, friends, and temporary housing as we rebuild. And it's our government that's helping them now. It's our government has a plan to fight climate change. If you go visit my riding, they are the first to stand up and say, please, will you address the impacts of climate change? We have to act, and we have to act now.
Honourable member for Lethbridge.
Here's the problem with that, is that since these Liberals took power and imposed the carbon tax, emissions have actually gone up, not down. So I don't know how those constituents are being helped by this, aside from paying a whole lot of money to get a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, is that a tax is not the answer. Canadians are the answer. They are the innovators. They are the problem solvers. Yes. They are the solution makers. They are the ones that will get us out of this Liberal-made mess. Canadians are the ones that we believe in. So finally, when will you scrap your failed Liberal experiment and give Canadians back control of their lives?
Now, the honourable member knows that she's to address all questions and comments through the chair and not directly to the government. The honourable parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, I hate to break it to the honourable member, but emissions are going down, and we're on track to meet our carbon emission targets, Madam Speaker. But let's talk about the Conservative record for just a little bit. For 10 long years, they did absolutely nothing about climate change, Madam Speaker. They blew up the Kyoto Accord and blew up our emissions target. They cut, Madam Speaker, $350 million from the climate change budget. They're not serious about climate change, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, I just want to remind members again, so this has happened during questions and during answers, and I would ask members to please hold their thoughts when somebody else has the floor.
The honourable member for Repentigny. With 5 days to go before COP15, we'd like some good news for biodiversity, Madam Speaker, but the only good news is for fossil fuels. On Tuesday, Alberta's gas industry boasted record production in November, 509 million cubic meters a day, a 300% increase in profits. The same day, on Tuesday, on the biodiversity front, the federal government reported that 20% of wildlife species in Canada are at risk of extinction. Should the gas industry be tripling profits while 20% of species are threatened? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
And we're working very hard with industry to get those emissions down. As the honourable member will know, we're capping emissions from the oil and gas sector. We're eliminating fossil fuel subsidies. And Madam Speaker, we are inviting the world to COP15 in Montreal next week. And Madam Speaker, we also have very aggressive targets for biodiversity preservation because we know species are going extinct at a very rapid rate globally and here in Canada. That's why we've committed to 25% of our land and waters to be preserved by 2025, and by 2030, 30% of our wildlife.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. A report on wildlife species finds that 2,253 species are at risk, including the right whale. But what is the government doing for the right whale 5 days before COP15 on biodiversity? They're giving the green light to oil drilling in the whale's habitat off the coast of Newfoundland without any environmental assessment. At the same time, the government's inviting the whole world to COP15 on biodiversity, and this report showing that biodiversity is in free fall. Why is the federal government actively threatening biodiversity for the sake of finding more oil and gas? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Minister, rather.
And I share the member's concern for North Atlantic right whales. This is an...
I'd like to remind members, I shouldn't have to, but when someone else has the floor, please remain silent. The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I share the concern about North Atlantic right whale, which is an endangered species. Our government is taking decisive and necessary steps to protect them. We've implemented Canada's dynamic closure system to protect whales when they're sighted. We remove ghost gear to reduce entanglements. We are innovating on whale-safe gear to further protect these whales. We're aware of their situation, and I am working hard to make sure that we are protecting them.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, the 2022 hunting season is drawing to a close, and hunters are celebrating a successful harvest of deer, moose, and other game. But here in Ottawa, the Liberals have set their sight on a very different target. With no warning and no consultation, the Liberals have announced their plan to ban hunting rifles and shotguns. The hunters have become the hunted. Why does this Liberal government always punish law-abiding hunters and sport shooters while giving bail and house arrest for violent repeat offenders?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, in fact, my colleague from the Conservative Party is wrong. We are not targeting hunters. In fact, I met members of the hunting community this morning to assure them that what we are going after are the AR-15 style firearms, which have been used in far too many mass casualties across the country. More than that, we have a plan to tackle illegal smuggling at the border by investing $130...
Order. I certainly heard that, and I would ask the Honourable Member for Lethbridge, after the questions and comments, to apologize for her statement. And she knows that that is not acceptable in this House, and I hope that she takes it seriously. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm going to set aside that remark that I hope that my colleague will apologize for. It has no place in this chamber. We're trying to have a responsible debate about how to keep Canadians safe, Madam Speaker. And again, we'll continue to go after AR-15 style guns, which have no place in our communities. We'll continue to invest in stopping illegal smuggling of guns at our borders. Those are initiatives which the Conservatives have voted against, and they should reverse their position. Thank you.
Again, I was hearing more voices than the minister, and I would ask members again whether they appreciate the answer or not, that they're here to listen to the answer and they can follow up with a subsequent question. The honourable member Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, I won't take any lessons on firearms from a minister who visited a gun range and was too afraid to even touch one. These Liberals can't tell the difference between a machine gun and a BB gun. While the Liberals plan to waste billions of dollars going after 100-year-old hunting rifles, smugglers continue to ship handguns by the thousands over our borders that are being used on our streets. Why are these Liberals so off target on tackling the real sources of violent crime?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, it is very regrettable that today Conservatives are resorting to personal attacks on me, onto members of our side and the government who represent hunters. Madam Speaker, more to the point, I've met with families who've lost loved ones to gun violence, and I don't know how we look any of them in the eye and don't do these smart, sensible things that we are doing right now, which is to get AR-15 style guns out of our communities, to stop illegal smuggling at our borders, to stop gun crime from occurring at every instance. The Conservatives have filibustered and have gone with falsehoods when they should be supporting these initiatives. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Barrie Springwater Oro-Medonte.
Madam Speaker, last week this Liberal government tabled an amendment to Bill C-21 that would prohibit hundreds of thousands of hunting rifles. This government wants to turn law-abiding hunters and farmers who use rifles as tools to feed their families and protect their livestock into criminals overnight. Meanwhile, since this Prime Minister has taken office, violent crime has risen by 32% and gang-related homicides have increased by 92%. Madam Speaker, when will this government focus on the illegal guns that are flooding our streets and the criminals who use them and stop targeting law-abiding hunters and farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Rural Economic Development.
Madam Speaker, I've been a hunter and fisher all my life. I've got great memories of hunting with my dad, and I wish he was there now because he would support me 100%. Because me and my friends, we've looked at the amendments to C-21. We agree. Every time we see a firearm that kills an innocent person, that hurts a law-abiding gun owner. My friends support C-21. We all have to do our part to get assault-style weapons off this planet. Thank you.
The honourable member for Barrie Springwater Oro-Medonte.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, let's talk about some facts. Just yesterday in the Public Safety Committee, the Liberal government's own firearms expert who helped write Bill C-21 admitted on record that hunting rifles would be banned if this law is enacted. Will the Liberals admit they have made a mistake, admit these amendments are affecting law-abiding hunters and farmers, and cancel Bill C-21?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, in fact, the expert that my colleague is referring to refuted many of the misnomers and inaccuracies that the Conservatives continue to perpetrate. More to the point, we have a plan, Madam Speaker, to eradicate gun violence once and for all. That includes investments at our borders to support CBSA the Conservatives voted against. That includes addressing gun crime at its root causes. We invested $250 million. The Conservatives voted against. It also includes common sense laws like Bill C-21 so that we can get those guns that have no place in our communities off our streets once and for all. Thank you.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Madam Speaker, we need to keep our communities safe from handgun violence, and this government promised to do that. But at the 11th hour, the government slipped an amendment into C-21 that is not about dealing with handguns. Instead, the government is now targeting, quote, rifles and shotguns with detachable clips. This is a huge overreach that will impact rural, northern, and Indigenous people, and this government needs to fix this. So will the Attorney General ensure that this legislation on handguns is not going to target legitimate hunters and rural people?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Well, I thank my colleague for the question, and I can assure him and the NDP, and in fact all parliamentarians who want to advance a responsible debate about this, that we are not going to target those guns which are used conventionally for hunting. We are targeting those guns like AR-15 style firearms, which have caused too many casualties right across the country, Madam Speaker. And I know that my colleague and I and others who are, again, contributing to a responsible debate about this. We'll get there. What's important is that we keep our streets safe from gun violence, and that's exactly what we are going to do. Thank you.
The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Madam Speaker, again, I'm warning the government of huge risks from unregulated shipbreaking. An oil spill was discovered on the shoreline of a shipbreaking facility in Union Bay on Vancouver Island. This facility has been operating despite legal challenges and objections by local governments and First Nations. Bain Sound is critical to our local economy and ecosystems. It's home to over 50% of BC's shellfish, and it's important for herring spawning. And this government's ocean protection plan is nowhere to be found. Will this government finally act by creating robust federal ship recycling regulations?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the honourable member for his question, for his environmental advocacy, Madam Speaker. We know that oil spills are a very serious thing in ocean environments. We have the Oceans Protection Plan, over $1 billion, as the honourable member will know, and I'd like to take this issue up with him offline and see what we can do about his particular situation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Madam Speaker, the prosperity of our communities is reliant on the social and economic inclusion of persons with disabilities. It is essential that Canadians with disabilities are empowered to live a meaningful, dignified, and quality life. Organizations in Richmond Hill, such as Large Daybreak, Open Mind Alliance, and My MS Family of York Region, dedicated themselves to the well-being and inclusion of persons with disabilities, and they serve as an admirable example of how people of different intellectual disabilities can live and learn together. As tomorrow marks the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion update this House on how our government is working to build a more inclusive and accessible Canada for everyone?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member from Richmond Hill for his tireless work on behalf of all persons with disabilities and all constituents. In October, we launched the first ever Disability Inclusion Action Plan, a roadmap for our country to remove barriers by focusing on financial security, employment, accessible and inclusive communities, and a modern approach to disability. And with Bill C-22, we have the framework legislation in place to create the groundbreaking Canada Disability Benefit. Tomorrow, today, and every day, let's celebrate the accomplishments of persons with disabilities as we work together to build a more inclusive and more accessible Canada. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister has repeatedly cited national security as a pretext to avoid answering basic questions about Beijing's election interference. This is exactly the opposite of the advice that he received from CSIS that said that the government's policy in combating foreign interference be grounded in transparency and sunlight, and that foreign interference be exposed to the public. Why does the Prime Minister refuse to follow the advice of CSIS?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities.
Madam Speaker, the importance of our national security and protecting our democracies should be something that every single Canadian takes seriously. While the Conservatives continue to play politics with our national security, serious governments like ours take national security seriously. All of the information that Conservatives want would be available. All we're asking is that it's treated in a way that protects our national security and ensures that our adversaries don't get access to the very information that they would try to use to undermine our democracy.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister very conveniently and very specifically claims that he was not briefed about candidates receiving money from China, except that is not what is at issue. What is at issue is a vast campaign of election interference by Beijing involving 11 candidates. Was the Prime Minister briefed about that, yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Said the protection of our democracy is paramount. But with that, protecting our democracy also means respecting it. Yesterday, the member opposite, when I stood and rose in this place, continually screamed for me to sit down. Yet, he didn't have that same emotional outburst when the Minister of Public Safety was answering that question. So, Madam Speaker, some advice to the members opposite. If they support the protection of democracy, they might want to start by respecting protecting the women that have been democratically elected in this place.
Now, again, the response from the member for St. Albert Edmonton while the parliamentary secretary was speaking is also not acceptable. And she was answering the question, and she doesn't need to be told that she needs to sit down. Okay, I will correct that one on that last point, but that it was unacceptable what was happening there. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
One moment here. Again, the honourable for Lethbridge is out of order. Yes. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Like a game of dodgeball, the Prime Minister has become very deft at the 5 Ds of question periods: dodge, deny, deflect, deceive, and dribble. The problem is, when it comes to China's interference in our Canadian elections, it's not a game because it's serious business, and it's been widely reported that the Prime Minister received specific, credible information on election interference in Canada, and he's done nothing about it. So let's try again. Has the Prime Minister received any briefings or memos, verbal or written, specific to foreign interference in Canadian elections by the Chinese Communist government? Yes or no?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, I assure my colleague that we take all allegations of foreign interference very seriously. That's why we struck independent, nonpartisan professional panels to look at these allegations, who subsequently confirmed that the results of the elections in 2019 and 2021 were both free and fair. And more importantly, Madam Speaker, we're going to continue to do everything to protect our democratic institutions, including our elections, so that Canadians can have their voices represented in this chamber, including my honourable colleague, the Parliamentary Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs, who does stellar work for her riding and on this issue. Thank you.
L'honorable leader adjoint de l'opposition officielle à la Chambre.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The best way to protect our democracy is to respect the guidelines of CSIS. I have many briefings in my hands for the Prime Minister, largely redacted, but they say that Canada could use a policy on transparency that would draw attention to the fact that foreign interference should be made public. Madam Speaker, the question's simple. Why is the Prime Minister afraid of following the lead of his own national security agency and telling the whole truth to Canadians? There's nothing partisan. It's coming from CSIS. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madame la Présidente, je suis très fier de...
Madam Speaker, I'm very proud of the government's work on this file, which has increased transparency by creating institutions such as NSI COP and others. The Conservatives never took such action. This shows our devotion to protecting our democratic institutions in a transparent way. Thank you.
Madame la Présidente, nouveau record au chemin.
Madam Speaker, a new record at Roxham Road. 3,901 people came through in October. All these people could have crossed the border with dignity if Canada suspended the Safe Third Country Agreement. But the federal government's inaction pushes them towards Roxham, where they're met by the RCMP. Superintendent Martin Roach told the committee that he has 120 officers patrolling the borders in Quebec, but 90% of them are stuck managing Roxham. Does the minister not think that these officers would be more useful fighting gun trafficking rather than managing Roxham? Pardon me. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let's be very clear. The closure of Roxham Road or suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement is not the solution that is going to solve the overall problem. As the member on the other side knows, Canada shares the longest demilitarized border in the world. Roxham collects IDs from asylum seekers and helps them avoid crossing dangerously. Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Lac-Saint-Jean. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean, rather. 90% of RCMP at the border are stuck at Roxham Road. You'd think this would be bad news for smugglers who take advantage of asylum seekers, but no, the RCMP hasn't been able to lay a single charge, not one. Why? Because smugglers are committing their crimes in the United States and the Americans aren't cooperating. The minister's been saying for 4 years that there's been negotiations with the agreements, and for 4 years nothing has come of it. Not only has the agreement not been suspended, there's not even any police cooperation. When will the minister put their pants on, stand up, and find a way to be taken seriously by the Americans? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Madam Speaker, the member on the other side must understand that the migration crisis is a challenge for Canada and the entire world. That's why we're working with the international community to find sustainable solutions. That's why we have to respect our international obligations regarding refugees. And on this side of the House, we will continue to work with every partner instead of trying to start fights.
Edmonton Manning.
Speaker, Edmonton Manning residents are asking why everything seems to be broken in Canada. They say government mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic has fueled record inflation. And why? $54 million on the useless ArriveCan app. $237 million to a former Liberal MP for ventilators that sit in a warehouse collecting dust. $1 billion in wage subsidy checks to corporations that pay out corporate dividends. When will the Liberal government end their useful spending that is increasing inflation and that costs every Canadian $3,500 a year?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, one thing that's very useful for families in Alberta is our agreement for daycare programs. That means people in Alberta will save more than $5,610 right away with that agreement. And when the program is fully implemented, it will be up to $8,600. That's per child on average. That's real money. That's real help to help Albertans put bread on their tables. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, yes, we're going to need some bread on that table because food bank use continues to rise, but the Liberals don't seem to care. In Beauce, food banks are barely keeping up with growing demand. Of the 12,500 requests for food aid answered per month through their network of agencies, 1/3 of those requests are for children. 1/3. The government is completely out of touch with reality, and their environmental plan is doing nothing but raise taxes. When will the NDP Liberal coalition get their hands out of Canadians' pockets and cancel all tax increases? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, mon collègue...
Madam Speaker, my colleague started his question by talking about the higher number of Canadians going to food banks, and then bizarrely, he concluded with the carbon tax. We are there to help Canadians make ends meet. We invested $400 million more to help, which means that those $450 million, that means that money is going to help get children out of poverty.
Madam Speaker, when the Liberal government was first elected, the Prime Minister declared Canada is back. Unfortunately, they didn't say what they were bringing back, namely deficit spending, inflation, economic slowdown, and government boondoggles, such as the $54 million Arrive scam app, a $237 million patronage contract for ventilators, and the $500 million WE scandal. Madam Speaker, when will this government stop its inflationary spending and start putting the economy back on the road to recovery?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
De la Présidente du Conseil du Trésor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When we said we were not only that we were back, we were going to have Canadians back, Madam Speaker. And in 7 years of this government, we've introduced programs which made a huge difference to Canadians. The Canada Child Benefit, which has really have been able to cut down child poverty in this country by more than 425,000 children today who are not in a situation of poverty. When we're talking about the Canada Worker Benefit, or we're talking about Canada Dental Benefit, those are things which really have Canadians' backs. But you know who doesn't have Canadians' backs, Madam Speaker? The official opposition, who voted against each one of these great programs for
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. We all have to play in preventing gender-based violence. Many men and boys are aware of gender inequities. It is crucial to start discussions at a young age to encourage them to act now to develop healthy masculinities. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth speak about what our government is doing to support the allyship of men and boys in addressing gender-based violence? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Secretary.
Madam Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge for his question. For many men, the awareness of gender-based violence hits close to home when they have a daughter or when they reflect on the women in their lives. But, Madam Speaker, women and girls can't wait that long. This week, as part of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, our government provided roughly $600,000 to White Ribbon. With this support, White Ribbon can continue calling men and boys into the conversation and find ways to address problematic social norms and attitudes that are harmful to so many. Only together can we address gender-based violence.
The honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Madam Speaker, residents of Saskatoon are suffering because of the carbon tax. It makes the cost of everything increase. Fuel and home heating are more expensive, and so is food. 20,000 people are using the Saskatoon Food Bank each month, and 40% of them are children. This tax plan does nothing for the environment. Instead, it is ripping a hole in the bank accounts of Canadians. Will this Liberal government show some compassion and stop forcing their failed carbon tax on Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'm not sure the honourable member heard the good news, but this spring, as of April 1st, a family of 4 will get up to about $1,500 in Saskatchewan, $1,000 in my home province of Manitoba, Madam Speaker. They're going to receive these checks every 3 months. This is going to help with cash flow. It's going to help with affordability, Madam Speaker. But the other side has no plan for affordability, Madam Speaker, no plan for the economy, no plan to fight climate change.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Madam Speaker, in Calgary, families are waiting up to 112 days to access shelter and support services. According to the Discovery House, and I quote, "It used to be that everyone would stay for 6 to 7 months on average. We had seen an increase to 10 or 11 months, or even sometimes a year. That's because of the affordability crisis." Madam Speaker, with higher rates of violence and increased costs of living for families, families are vulnerable. Will this Liberal government end their inflationary policies that are punishing Canadians and help those who are trying to escape family violence?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister pour les Femmes et de l'Égalité des Genres.
For Women and Gender Equality and Youth.
Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for the question. We realize, we know on this side of the House that it's a difficult time for families. That's why, most recently, we launched the National Action Plan to End Gender-Based Violence. This is a joint federal, provincial, and territorial agreement moving forward to ensure that we're there for women and gender-diverse people as they are seeking help and getting out of abusive situations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Madam Speaker, a year ago, the Advisory Panel on Systemic Discrimination in the Military recommended excluding clergy of the 3 Abrahamic religions from being chaplains. I quote, "Defense cannot consider itself supportive of inclusivity when it employs as chaplains members of organizations whose values are not consistent with national defense's ethics. For example, some churches exclude women from their priesthoods, and certain faiths have strict tenets requiring conversion," end quote. This recommendation is anti-Muslim, anti-Catholic, and anti-Jewish, as the government definitively rejected it.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for raising the issue of prison chaplaincy, of chaplaincy in the National Defence Forces. It is absolutely important to do spiritual care that is sensitive, culturally aware, and engaging all people from different faith communities. This government is committed to doing that. We'll take his question under advisement and be back to him. Thank you.
Excellent. The honourable member for Halifax West.
Madame la Présidente, les jeunes sont les leaders.
Madam Speaker, youth are leaders of today and tomorrow. They're agents of change, helping to build a future of clean air and water, affordable housing, and economic opportunity for all. I know that young people, no matter where they come from, sustain our country's strength, diversity, and inclusion. And Canada's better for it. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship provide an update on how our government is leveraging youth to help rebuild our economy? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And let's be clear, Canada benefits when a variety of engaged and self-reliant young people from abroad who want to find meaningful work and life experiences come here. Yesterday, the minister announced a 20% increase in the number of young people who can participate in the International Experience Canada program. This increase means that nearly 90,000 candidates will be able to work and travel in Canada, including young Francophones. That will help employers deal with labor shortages, provide interesting work opportunities, and we know that when we invest in young people...
Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Madam Speaker, the recent wild species report found that 1 in 5 species in Canada are disappearing. That's more than 2,000 of Canada's species at risk of extinction or extirpation. This loss is a huge threat to our environment, our ecosystems, and our food supply. The Liberals have made almost no progress on their promises to protect 30% of our natural lands by 2030. So will this government introduce a Biodiversity Accountability Act to make sure we reach those critical targets?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Climate,
thank you, Madam Speaker.
Environment and Climate Change.
The Honourable Member for his advocacy on this front. He is absolutely right. We tabled the wild species report the other day. We are losing some of our species at a very rapid rate. And Madam Speaker, that's why we are gathered in Montreal at the UN Biodiversity Convention. And Madam Speaker, we have stepped up to make aggressive targets, 25% of our land and waters by 2025, 30 by 30. We're focused like a laser beam on this, Madam Speaker, and we look forward to working with the Honourable Member to realize those goals.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Madam Speaker, I have an entrepreneur in my riding, Danielle Dubois, of Zenith Nutrition, who produces healthy energy bars made exclusively with local and Canadian ingredients. The classification of her bars means that she has to charge GST, unlike less healthy products made with imported industrial ingredients. Imagine, she's being penalized because she's supporting Canadian farmers with healthy ingredients. Can the minister tell us if they intend to review this 30-year-old law so that our healthy local foods are not taxed and disadvantaged? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please allow me to start by thanking the member for Richmond-Arthabaska for his work, for his hard work, and to congratulate the entrepreneur for promoting local Canadian products. Our government has always supported small businesses. In our last budget, we reduced taxes for small businesses again, down to 9%. It's among the lowest rates throughout the world. As for the question raised on this specific issue, it will be my pleasure to speak directly with my colleague. But I also invite the manufacturer to participate in...
And that brings us to the end of question period. Before I go to the point of order, I want to deal with an issue that I raised during question period, and that is that I did indicate that I would be asking the Honourable Member for Lethbridge for an apology to the Minister of Public Safety for her comment in the House. The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Madam Speaker, earlier today I called the Minister of Public Safety a liar. I shouldn't have done that. Instead, I should have said he misled this House. I apologize.
I don't believe that that is an acceptable apology at this point. The Honourable Member is trying to justify what she has said, and I would just ask the Honourable Member if she wants to try that one more time, given the unparliamentary language that was in the House.
I apologize.
The honourable member for Elgin Middlesex London has a point of order.
Thank you very much. And I know that today's debate, of course, we get very uptight on certain issues, but I find it very rich when we have a member talking about the rights of women, who then turns to me and tells me to zip it. So I would like to ask for an apology from the member for Ajax. If they were actually going to talk about treating people with dignity and respect, that it goes for conservative women as well. Thank you.
On that same point of order, the Honourable House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased and proud to represent the riding of Ajax. I don't think that that's who she was referring to. But I do say that this is an opportunity perhaps to reflect on the... Madam Speaker.
One point of order. If the honourable member wants to go back on the other point of order, I will go back. I'm not going to interrupt the honourable member during his point of order. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I think there's an opportunity. We've had an opportunity at House Leaders meeting to talk about the manner in which we address each other. We've had good discussions where we've agreed to stop yelling and to follow the standing orders. Well, that was my understanding, I hope. I think that when I'm hearing the other side saying no, that they do think it's acceptable.
The Honourable House Leader to speak to his point of order and to ignore anything that's coming from the other side at this point, because it shouldn't be about debate. So then if there's other points of order, I'll address those. The Honourable House Leader.
This point, I thought, and hearing the members yelling no, I have to go back to the House Leaders meeting and have a conversation about what I thought we had agreed to. What I thought we had agreed to, Madam Speaker, is that when a member is speaking, the practice of screaming or yelling at them when they're attempting to speak is not becoming of this place. It is against the standing orders. It needs to stop. And so I will take it back to the House Leaders, and I hope that we will have a productive discussion in that regard. And people are yelling even as I'm speaking here, Madam Speaker, so clearly we have more work to do.
So, point of order, the Honourable Member for Elgin Middlesex London.
Madam Speaker, I was absolutely wrong. Although the member from Ajax did apologize for something, he had no idea what he was supposed to be apologizing for. This was regarding the member from Pickering Uxbridge, who stood and talked about the way women were treated in this House. Yet to her own female colleague did the exact same thing. So I do find it very rich. I would ask the member from Uxbridge recognize that all women in this Parliament, regardless of political party, all matter. All women matter, just not from the Liberal Party. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does the Honourable Member for Uxbridge want to comment? I'll recognize her.
Madam Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. That's not what happened. The members opposite were screaming as they're screaming at me now, when I simply raised the point that yesterday when I stood in this place, the member from St. Albert, Edmonton, was screaming for me to sit down, and they were trying to deny that didn't happen. Madam Speaker, there are lots of witnesses on this side, and she has to account for her denial of a member on their side telling another woman to sit down.
I just want to remind all members that there are things that are being said on both sides, and I would just ask members to please respect the rules of the House and to respect each other, whether you are asking the question or waiting for an answer or delivering the answer. And so I think that all in all, there has been some words that have been said on both sides, and I would ask members to please refrain from that. Another point of order, the honourable member for Elgin Middlesex London.
I am sorry, but I was watching that member. It was eye-to-eye contact. I would like an apology from that member, because she knows. That member knows it was directed at me. That member looked directly at me and said it to me, and this House was quiet at the time. It was not during that. So I'd like to share that with you. I wish that she would reconsider her actions, and
So again, I would have to review Hansard to see exactly what was said. As far as for looks in the House, it's something that I can't, Hansard will not show. And so I would just, again, ask members to be respectful of each other in the House here. I also want to add that I owe an apology to the honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton, for part of the answer, the comments that I made to him about him today, and so he did not ask the honourable member to sit down, but he did call her by name. And but I just want to again reinforce the fact that we need to be respectful of each other here in the House. C'est un point d'ordre. Okay, parfait. Good. Tabling of documents. So I think I just... Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health and the Minister of Sports.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai le plaisir de déposer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the pleasure to table in both official languages the report on COVID-19 rapid test procurement and distribution.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36.8a, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 6 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format, Madam Speaker.
Tabling of documents. Dépôt de projet de loi émanant du gouvernement. Déclaration de ministre. Rapport de délégation interparlementaire.